First question, what do the Barrens look like? Well, in a second I'll spin the camera around and you can get a look. Wide open spaces, very few trees. Another question was asked about places that I find special, spiritual. This is the Buena Vista Grasslands in central Wisconsin. It's a whole lot of empty space, but if you spend some time here, there's some really neat things that happen. Sometime tonight, the large flocks of cranes will start congregating nearby in the cornfields. Great place to see hawks during the day and some types of owls at night. Not a whole lot of deer, lots of chickens, prairie chickens. Next question was what happened at Corey's uncle's place, and it was kind of blurry in the story. I get that, and that was intentional. From the point of view of Corey, everything's fallen apart. He doesn't understand, and I wanted the reader to be left with that same feeling. Background story: sometimes adults don't always act like adults. Corey's uncle isn't ready to deal with being a parent. Some people just aren't cut out for it. Some people have issues that they need to deal with on their own, and as we find out towards the end, he kind of does. All right, the question is, how come Mr. Kulix is so mean and a science teacher? I thought it'd be fun. I thought it'd be fun to take all the characteristics that I don't want to see in a teacher, and some, frankly, that I sometimes see in myself, and put them all into one character. I don't think anyone is quite that bad. If they are, they're in the wrong profession. But, you know, look around you. Sometimes you have good days and bad days. Mr. Kulix has had a whole bunch of bad days. Question is, do they have to do any research on prairies? And the answer is yes. But I've been doing research on prairies for 30 years. I fell in love with prairies when I was working up in northern Wisconsin, out in a place called the Barrens. Look it up, it's a pretty cool place. At the time I knew nothing about it, and I got the opportunity to spend a summer working there with students, with high school kids, and it changed my life. It's why I became a teacher, it's why I love prairies, and it led to me standing out here on a cold Sunday morning talking to you. So, who knows what path it's going to take, but yes, I did an awful lot of prairie research. I do prairie restoration work. In my own home, I do a lot of work planting prairies and burning prairies. There's a video you can take a look at of my backyard on fire. It's on the same YouTube channel here. So yes, research is fun, research is constant, always doing research. Question is, do I have a mother figure like Ellen? Yes and no. Mom is awesome. Mom is 86 years old and went parasailing a year ago. But is she like Ellen? Probably not. Probably about as tall as Ellen is, but maybe not quite as feisty. The next questions come from Mrs. Jensen's class. Yep, Mrs. Jensen's class at Prairie View Middle School. And the first question is how I came up with the title. Well, the title Restoration in the Barrens really has two different meanings at the same time. In the story, Corey is interested in prairies and restorations and doing anything he can to help protect an ecosystem that he loves and is a connection between him and his father that he lost. But as the story ends, there's a family that's restored also. Both Corey is restored with a set of parents that care about him, but Ben and Ellen, whose own family was ripped apart, is restored. So, double meaning with the restoration. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Katie asked if the eagle represented anything significant to me, as it did with Corey in the story. And I had to think about that, and the answer, I believe, is yes. When I was your age, seeing an eagle was rare. DDT, making their eggshells kind of fragile, almost made eagles extinct. They were not found here much at all. The opportunity to see an eagle was rare. As people got smarter, started caring about things like that, figured out the connection between the DDT and the eagles, the population slowly started to increase. And then as I got into high school and college, I remember being amazed anytime we'd see an eagle, we'd pull off to the side of the road to grab binoculars and watch this bird. Well, 2 weeks ago in the fields you see behind me, there was a bald eagle. Now they're quite common, and every time I see one, it's like, maybe things are going to be all right. Cassie asked, what was school like for me? Let me start by saying that if my teachers knew what I did for a living, or that I wrote a book, or that I read a book, they would probably be rolling over in their grave right now. But for the most part, school was not a bad time for me. I wasn't harassed. It wasn't awful to go to school. But where all of my friends were interested in more team sports, I would much rather be in the woods with a shotgun, or on a lake with a fishing pole, or cross-country skiing through some place in the middle of the night. I spent about as much time outdoors as I could. Occasionally I could drag some friends along, but sometimes all that nature stuff was just a little bit too much for them to take. Other than that, pretty typical kid. Big family, brothers and sisters who enjoyed many of the same things I did, so that kind of helped out a lot. Andrew asked about where the background story for Ben and Ellen came from. It's a great question. It's kind of a composite of the lives of about 3 families that I know. These are people who have overcome personal tragedies and yet didn't let that bring them down. They worked to make sure other people were doing well, even though some pretty unfortunate things had happened to them. I was able to take bits and pieces of their life, their struggle, and how they overcame that to build Ben and Ellen. Some of it also came out of my imagination, but the inspiration came from those families. Brooklyn and Trixie asked if I were going to rewrite the story, what would I change? And the honest answer is I really don't know. I'm sure it would be different. When you write from where your head's at the time. And that was a while ago, and a lot has changed since then. At the time, I wasn't a father, and I wrote an awful lot about, or was at the same time researching, thinking an awful lot about adopting. And I've since adopted my son 10 years ago. So now my perspective as a father, as opposed to someone thinking about becoming a dad, would change how I write, I am certain. Probably the best move is to not think about it and work on the next book instead. So, the next questions come from Mr. Brandel's 7th grade class at the Patrick Marsh Middle School. First question comes from Jacob. What or who inspired me to write the book? And the answer, I guess, is 3 things. First of all, at the time, we were teaching about prairies in our middle school, and we couldn't find any book that didn't have a covered wagon. And the kids were convinced that prairie ecosystems were something that happened 100 years ago. And yet, most of these kids live in an area where there's a prairie remnant out their back door. So that was one of the motivations. At the same time, I was hearing a lot of adults talking about kids in ways that I didn't like. Maybe convincing themselves that the problems that kids have really weren't important problems compared to, adult problems. I kind of disagreed. I also ran into a group of people at one very unfortunate meeting I was at who spent the time talking about how awful foster parents were. And I only knew good foster parents. I was kind of upset. So that kind of put all those things together, and it was enough to get me to start writing without really an intention of it going anywhere, but one thing led to another, and here I am, stammering around on a videotape trying to explain it to you. All right, got it? Good. Jacob also asked how long it took to write the book. First draft, probably around 5 or 6 months. The next 57 drafts took about a year. And eventually I simply had to say, I'm done. You start overthinking things and it becomes difficult. So, short answer, about a year and a half from start to finish, and there was a book ready to get published. Ella asked, where did Andy come from? Where did the story or the idea for Andy came from? And this one I took directly from a student. I had a absolutely amazing kid who had leukemia, survived leukemia, and went on to be really successful, do wonderful things. Great kid. Haven't heard from him for a while. If you see him, tell him he's got it right. He even read the book. And I don't think he realized his role in that part of the story, but that's okay. The other reason for Andy was so that I could find a way to get Corey to realize that other people have struggles too. Other people have gone through tragic situations and have come out alive. They've survived it. So maybe there's some hope for Corey. Jenna wrote, why did I make the book about restoring prairies? Well, you write about what you know about, what you love, what you care about, and that, for me, that's prairies. If I was, a big hockey player, like some of my friends are, I would write a story about hockey. I don't know much about hockey. I know about Big Blue Stem. I wanted to find a way to get kids to understand a few things about prairies without making it sound like a textbook or without getting preachy. So here's my little sneaky trick. If I can get you to care about Corey and maybe care about some of the things that he cares about, maybe you're going to end up learning a few things about prairies in the long run. Pretty sneaky trick, don't you think? Rachel asked about stereotyping in the book and whether or not I'd ever been stereotyped. Stereotyping becomes very synonymous with bullying. While I've never experienced that, I've seen it. I've worked with kids who've had to work through that. Whether in this area, sometimes there are some unfortunate stereotypes of our Hmong students or our Native American students. And we have gone to a great extent to help squash that. And one of the ways you do that is, through education. I think if you learn things, it kind of helps fight stereotyping. So that's the reason it's in the book. Not to get preachy about it, but to maybe throw it in there as part of a discussion. Maybe at some point, someone maybe picks up on, some stereotyping they might be doing. I absolutely hate it when I catch myself doing it, and I don't appreciate it when other people do the same thing. The next questions come from Mrs. Stapleman's 7th grade team at Patrick Marsh Middle School, with the first question coming from Elena. And the question is the book based on a true story? Yes and no. My parents at the time of the story were very much alive, and that was kind of important that Mom made sure I tell people that. The adventures that are in the story, some of them are things that have happened to me. Some of them are completely made up. Some of the things in the story are simply a way to do a kind of a coded shout out to people I care about. They know that I'm talking about them or their messy office, and only they know that. They know that the name of that dog or that character was named after their dog, or there are inside jokes throughout the whole book, and part of it is there so that I can let people I care about know about how they've affected my life. They really have no bearing on the story as much as it's just kind of a little Little secret way to pass notes in class. Don't do that, that's bad. Aaron asked if I shared the same love of nature that Corey does, and the answer is absolutely yes. Growing up, I would go fishing and hunting with my dad all the time. Many adventures in northern Wisconsin. Absolutely anything we could do outdoors. I would much rather be outdoors than indoors. We would have adventures on the Rock River. We would, do all kinds of things. When I was old enough to get a paper route, I would save my money and I bought a boat. So then we'd be gone for a day on the river. A little older, better job, make a little bit more money, took up scuba diving. And then our adventures got even bigger. And nowadays my adventures involve, hanging out here in this area that you see behind you, and doing whatever I can to be outdoors rather than in. Dakota asks, how come I don't make this into a movie? Dakota, oh Dakota, you make it, you help me do this. You contact Ellen or Oprah or Bill Gates or whomever. You help me get this turned into a movie and I'll make a deal with you. I'll make sure you have a front row seat at the premiere, or, and this is even better, how about a walk-on cameo appearance in the film? We can make this happen. All right? So you contact Ellen, you contact somebody, I'll wait for the phone call, and then it's the red carpet. Get your red carpet walk down. Chris asks about where I teach. I teach in Wisconsin Rapids, and what my favorite football team is. And anybody, of course, my favorite football team is Manchester United. Or Arsenal. Oh, you mean American football. Badgers, Packers, the Wisconsin Rapids area middle school 7th grade red team, or the white team, depending on who I'm playing or who I'm watching play at the time. I'll watch anything, but mostly I'll watch it later because I'm going to spend my time. I'd like to thank all the middle school students in Sun Prairie for, first of all, reading my book and caring enough to ask questions. If I left something out, if something doesn't make sense, get a hold of me. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. Your teachers know how to get a hold of me, know the email address. I'll respond as fast as I can. But thanks again, and don't spend so much time indoors.